Judge, at the end of this debate, you will vote for me because my argument that the effect of the prison system better solves for the harms associated with the crime rates and the education within prisons answers the disadvantage while targeting the greater harm, which would be that of murderers running free, a harm which is immoral beyond belief. People need to be punished for their crimes, and a world without prisons is basically a world without punishment for such crimes. Regardless of the alternate form of punishment suggested, nothing will compare to the benefit that comes from such institutions, and thus murderers and rapists will be running free among the world.
I'd like to start off with my opponent's claims that the alternative suggested will result in decreased crime, which will mean people will not need to end up in prisons at all. There is no link between increasing the use of breathalyzers in cars and the decrease in one's desire to murder somebody. Thus, these suggestions do not take into account all crimes, so to go as far as to say that prisons are not needed because crimes won't be committed in the first place is an untrue warrant and thus should be rejected. Also, your alternatives are not mutually exclusive to the abolition of prisons, and thus I impose we should conduct such alternatives while still keeping prisons up and running. I will now provide the requested solvency for removing criminals off the streets. You are correct with your statistics of inmate reentry into the prison system, which is why, rather than abolishing prisons, I will offer a counter plan of increasing offender reentry programs within the prison systems themselves. According to a study conducted by Congressional Research Service, data show that by the end of a 5-year follow-up period, approximately 3/4 of prisoners released in 2005 were rearrested. Furthermore, they found that released prisoners were rearrested within 1 year of being released. By the end of the first year following release, 43.4% of inmates only were rearrested. Thus, a significant decline in the already apparent within 1 year time frame from implementation to release, not even taking into account those prisoners who will receive long-term experience with such programs as a result of longer sentencing. On the topic of poverty, you keep mentioning that the predominant wage makers in homes are those who enter the prison system and can no longer provide for their families, thus spiraling them into poverty. Again, I would like to offer that there is no link. Take into consideration the number of families who would suffer from poverty if the prison system decreased employment in their home and people were to lose his or her jobs who work as employees of prisons. As jobs have been lost in the United States, low-skilled workers have become less economically useful as wage laborers. Prisons absorb some low-skilled workers as prisoners, and guards and service workers. Furthermore, a large number of inmates are either unemployed or receiving wages below the poverty line prior to their arrest. Thus, the prison system cannot be attributed with poverty of individual families once their source of income is put behind bars. I provide evidence that your sources and links are contradictory. But you're right, I did not argue your warrant that overcrowding is not a cruel form of punishment. That is correct, because I do not believe that prisoners should be able to live in comfortable conditions. They are prisoners for a reason and should be viewed as such. Their daily needs are still being met, thus I do not see it fit to go as far as to say that overcrowding is a violation of human rights. In fact, if we were to abolish prisons and, like you suggest, force those people to work and integrate immediately into society, inmates would become laborers of capitalism where they will be imprisoned as wage earners. They may no longer be imprisoned within a four-wall institution, yet they will become prisoners of capitalism, which is the larger issue at hand here. You keep repeating the idea that abolishing the system that is broken in theory is the right way to go, so yes, why not do away with capitalism at all? Capitalism is the #1 contributor to poverty, which you seem to place so largely at the heart of the debate. Poverty is not created in a vacuum. You must understand that poverty is caused by the natural workings of a capitalist marketplace that has always excluded a significant part of the population from decent jobs, and thus the ability to purchase on the private market goods necessary for a decent life for themselves and their families. Thus, I encourage you to vote in favor of my argument that the proposition's claims are contradictory, and he supports my argument in doing away with a flawed system, therefore supporting the need to abolish capitalism as a whole, which is a larger contributor to the ills of society than prisons. Thus, prisons should not be abolished.